Hello, everyone. I'm Ron Tosto with Survetus. We're a cybersecurity and compliance consulting company out of San Francisco. We're also a QSA company. Today, we're going to take some time to talk about customizer approach. Is it right for your company? But first, I'd like to thank the Security Standards Council for this opportunity to share with you as we go into this new phase of what is PCI DSS 4.0. So with that, let's just jump right in. Now, there is assumption in this topic, this presentation, that if you're watching, you understand the payment card industry and the data security standards. So if you're new to the PCI DSS, you may want to pause and learn a little more and come back to this topic. But for those that are familiar with the topic, we're going to talk about why is there the customized approach? What is it? Whom should you involve? What is the company readiness for doing a customized approach? And then the execution for both implementation and continuous monitoring. And then we'll summarize it for today. Now, first of all, until the introduction of the PCI DSS version 4, there was only one approach to achieve compliance. Now we know that as the defined approach. The DSS continues to have the 6 goals and the 12 requirements, which have multiple security requirements within each major requirement. The DSS applies to all organizations that process, transmit, store, or affect the security of payment card information or payment information. Now, the council started with 4 major goals when they started writing the PCI DSS. And as shown here are 2 of those. The customizer approach directly reflect and connect to these goals. And this is why we have the customized approach. Now, throughout the world, there are many frameworks of information or cybersecurity. They're called frameworks because they have domains that touch on various aspects of security that need a compliance approach. Many frameworks require development of the program that leads to the development of testing of the controls. From the beginning, the Security Standards Council has always taken the time to figure out what the objectives are, write the requirements, decide what the risks are, and then write a test. This became the standard for all organizations, regardless if you were the payment brand, the banks, the merchant, the service provider, or the internal or external assessors. And this is really evident in the prioritized approach that often we use in steps for remediation. And the remediation and the prioritized approach really is based on the level of risk. Now, with a customized approach, organizations will not have to follow the defined approach, but they'll follow the objective. Actually, more specifically, they're going to follow the customized approach objective, which is found in each of the requirements throughout the DSS. So what is the customized approach? It is that meeting the objective. Nope, it's meeting the customized approach objective that comes within the standard. Now, before we go into who do we involve and are we ready, let's just talk about compensating controls. Now, in previous versions, there was always compensating controls. Compensating controls were simply those controls that had to have a compensation because there was a business or technical risk for the organization that was under assessment. Now, with a defined approach, there is still customized, still custom controls and the customized approach. So when you have a defined approach, you can still compensate it for something that you cannot really complete for that technical risk. Now, we're not really going to go into the deep of this. If you look at Appendix B and Appendix C of the standard, you can learn more about the compensating controls. But understand, compensating controls are not replaced by the customized approach. The customized approach is to meet those new technologies, such as containerizations or APIs, that need a custom assessment and a customized approach to determining compliance. Now, who do we involve? The PCI Security Standards Council spent years collaborating with over 200 organizations to develop version 4 of the standard. During this time, the council had to consider the objectives, risks, set the control requirements, establish the testing procedures for each control within the 6 goals and 12 requirements. Now, we often forget how much work has really been done by the supporting organizations that wrote over 400 controls, decided what the objectives are, wrote the requirements, decided the risk, and then worked on the test. This comes at the cost of doing this internally with your own team. And so to make this example that has been set by the council on how to collaborate, how to have success through collaboration, these are the groups, the major groups to really consider when you're starting in and considering to do a customized approach. Now, the internal team, as you start with the internal team, you have to have an executive sponsorship, such as the CIO or the CISO, have the finance team for the budgeting policy and processes. You need to have your internal audit team. You need to have a compliance team, your security team, and of course, your engineering team. All of these people will come to the table, and they're the ones that really work together to decide, is the new technology right for us? And are we able to implement and maintain the customized approach? Now, another part of deciding is customized approach right for us is working with the payment brands and the banks. Your acquiring bank or the brands may also have a requirement or regulation that they will add on to the requirements that you're already trying to follow with the customized approach objective. Now, if you're on board and you've gotten to this step, then you really have to get to the next 2 steps, right? Which is you've got to do a controls matrix and you're going to have to do a targeted risk analysis. And we really recommend that you go out and get an external assessor for this. They will have the most experience with customized approach. And then you can really work forward with making sure that you have an objective view of the customized approach, the test, was it effective, and is it sustainable? Now, we'll see in the documentation and you'll see in other presentations that for independence reasons, you want to have a second QSA will actually do the assessment, and they will look at all the information that's provided in the control matrix, the effective testing, and the targeted risk analysis. Now, at this point, for those of us that have been a part of the technical project, we understand that many complications arise during this process. There are 5 considerations before deciding to continue with implementing technology that would require the customized approach. The first consideration is capacity for such a project. You got to remember that implementation is above and beyond what your daily activities will be. So you really have to have the right amount of resources that can implement and design the custom control and run the testing. Now, besides the capacity, you really have to have the skill set. So if you have a large IT security team and you say, great, we have all the people, take the time to really figure out what their skill set is. If they have the skill sets, they have the capability to implement, then you have a good direction forward. But if you don't and you still want to do implementation, this is another opportunity for outsourcing to obtain the capability. So capacity and capability are essential for moving forward with implementation, designing, and testing. Now, I purposely put this one in the middle, which is a robust program. You have to have a robust, mature compliance program because it is now the requirements that are written by you and your organization have to be maintained by you and your organization. If you're an organization that is challenged with having multiple remediation items, which will now show up on the report of compliance, that show that you have areas that you are not able to meet on the defined approach, then it may be best to stop and reflect and have a project goal of really improving your project plan as a defined approach before going into the customized approach. Now, there is a level of effort, and I've kind of insinuated that with the capacity and capability, your program. The level of effort really has two pieces, which you've really already heard. The first level of effort is around the implementation and the design. In Appendix E, there is two templates. That is the targeted risk analysis and the controls matrix. You need to have a controls matrix and for every requirement that is going to be customized. But you can combine them into a single form as long as it has all the same information that is in the template that is in Appendix E. The targeted risk analysis, you must have a separate form for each control that's got a customized approach. And then you have to run the test on the control to ensure that it is effective. And then continue to monitor that control to ensure that it stays effective and it demonstrates compliance with the customized approach objective. So really, you keep in the what is the effort that you need to implement and what is it do you have for maintaining as you go through the cycle. And then lastly, budget. All effort requires budget. Budgets are usually a long lead item. You can estimate that it's going to take an organization somewhere between 18 and 24 months from the start of a budgeting cycle to the end of the budgeting cycle that ends up in the assessor determining what the test will be and assessing the results to determine compliance. And so this is, while it's the last bullet in this slide, it's really the first step that you need to look at in how fast can you move, how can you get funding to implement and continue your program for the long haul. Now let's look at the implementation. This is really at the point of you're the assessed organization or the organization that's going to be assessed. You have determined that you're going to use the customized approach. Where do you start? Now, I've already led in this a little bit, and we really start with a document. First of all, you must have a controls matrix. There is a template in Appendix E. Again, you don't have to use the template. As long as the same information is there, you can use one sheet for multiple requirements, as long as the control really reflects what is going to be done for each of those control. And this starts with what is the requirement, what is the customized approach objective. Now, we're not going to go over the form in this particular presentation. The form is straightforward. If you look at it in Appendix E, you can follow it along and you can make your own. Next is having a targeted risk analysis. Now, why do we use a big fancy term like targeted risk analysis? It really is targeting each control. There is one targeted risk analysis like the controls matrix. There is a template in Appendix E. You can use it or you can use your own, but you have to understand that you have to have at least one for each control. Now, here's the gotcha, and I understand that we're really on the implementation slide, but it's also important to understand that there's an annual requirement in Requirement 12 that says you must do an annual targeted risk analysis for everything that has, every control that has a customized approach. Once you have a customized approach, then you must determine how to test, what to test, how to determine it's effective. And this is really the last step for operationalizing the customized approach. Once you've tested and you've validated that the test is effective and how it is going to sustain, then an organization will move into the 12-month annual assessment cycle. Now you can see here from the circle, this indicates a 12-month period. You will continue to have all your defined approaches. You will continue to have defined approaches with compensating controls, and you'll have a customized approach controls throughout the 12 months. Now, as you get into the last of the 12 months, the darker area on the slide really provides the control matrix, all the targeted risk analysis, the testing evidence, and the evidence of effectiveness to the assessor. And this will be continuous basis. Now, what it's not in the slide, but you have to remember, I just said in the last slide, annual requirement, targeted risk analysis. So after the first year, right before you go into providing all this information, you got to have made sure that you've completed all your risk assessments. Now, what is the assessor review? The assessor review is, hey, I'm going to review the artifacts that are provided by the assessed entity. They're going to determine if the test, they're going to determine if all the paperwork is correct. If you have missed a targeted risk analysis, you may actually miss the opportunity to follow the customized approach. If for some reason the assessor determines you're not eligible for a customized approach, then the organization will have to find the defined approach as it is written in the PCI DSS version 4, which could lead to further complications on how to demonstrate compliance with the standard. Now, after the review, the assessor is going to give you, determine what the test is. Now, in section 10 of the DSS is the 3 things that you normally see. They'll examine, they'll observe, or they'll interview. You can expect that most assessors will come up with one of these 3 or a combination of those 3 tests for a customized approach. Now, this is really really highlights collaboration between the entity implementing the customized approach and being assessed and your assessor. So the assessor has to clearly understand from the documentation that you provided in the control matrix and the targeted risk analysis to determine what the testing will be to ensure that the results of those tests demonstrate that you have met the customized approach objective. And then at the last step is after the test is run, the organization will provide that evidence back to the assessor, which they will validate, do the control testing, and then determine compliance with the objective. Now, beyond the customized approach, there is still the defined approach. The assessor will continue to review evidence for the defined approach. Once all the controls have been defined, follow the evidence of defined approach or the customized approach, the assessor will continue on with a report of compliance. Now, one of the things that if you are an organization that has normally filled out a self-assessment questionnaire, a customized approach is not available for self-assessment questionnaire. So your organizations will have to do a report on compliance. If you have not done a report on compliance assessment or used an external assessor for those type of reports, then it is recommended that you spend some extra time as another consideration in should we follow the customized approach. Now, I just want to summarize as we close the session today. I want to leave you with these 5 points. The customized approach provides flexibility for the new technology and the testing methods for advanced compliance management program for the PCI DSS. To be successful, you have to collaborate. You have to have a mature, robust compliance program to help ensure that you're ready to run your own program where you have defined your own requirements and your own testing that will be maintained throughout the assessment cycle. Document, document, document. Just as it says on the slide, you have to have a control matrix for each customized approach. You have to have a targeted risk analysis. The lack of having those proper documentations could make you ineligible for the customized approach, which you were expecting to have with your assessor. And then prepare for the extra level of effort as it requires for implementation, design, testing, and continuous monitoring throughout the entire life cycle. Now, thank you for attending this presentation today. Again, if you have any questions, I would recommend that you continue to check back with the Council's frequently asked questions site. There also, this video, besides being on the Global Content Library, there'll be other content available. If you have a question for me as the presenter, you may reach out to me at LinkedIn and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Again, thank you and have a wonderful day.